All right, I will call this meeting of the Champaign-Urbana Cable, special meeting of the Champaign-Urbana Cable and Telecommunications Commission to order at the Urbana City Building at 4:12 p.m. on Thursday, November 5th, 2015. And if you would call the roll.
Chair Folk.
Present.
Commissioner Foster.
Present.
Commissioner Lukeman. Commissioner Rosales.
Here.
Vice Chair Cinder.
Here.
Commissioner Wadsworth has told us that he will attempt to call in. Commissioner Walker.
Here.
Your microphone. I guess I can't tell. Does anyone have any modifications to the agenda that they would like to propose?
Potentially. I noticed that we are required to hold an officers' election after the 1st of July, or the first meeting after the 1st of July, which we didn't have, and then it did not get done last meeting, and so we could schedule that for this meeting. Comes at an awkward time.
Well, I think it's a good idea to do that here. If let's modify the agenda as such.
Yeah, I would propose it come after the discussion of the future of the Cable Commission.
That
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The agenda is so modified. So now the agenda reads: new business, A, future of the Cable Commission, and B, election of officers. Or not. So that's the agenda item. Okay, moving forward. So the primary purpose of this meeting is to discuss what, if anything, we want to propose for the Cable Commission moving forward, given the, I believe is it on the agenda for the next meeting?
We did not have the ability to make it on the meeting for the 9th because the agenda was fixed as of yesterday.
Okay.
So it would be postponed 2 weeks to the 23rd.
Okay, so given that there is a council memo and ordinance change potentially being proposed on the 23rd,
Correct.
of November, when I will be out of town, by the way, so I can't attend that meeting. Which basically eliminates the ordinance that creates the commission, or the part of the ordinance that creates this commission, and it doesn't explicitly disband the commission, but I think that there would be no, I think we would have no role after that, so it would make most sense to disband.
As I understood from watching the video of the last meeting, city attorney indicated that it would not dissolve the commission. It would merely eliminate membership by Urbana appointments.
Right.
At which point I'm led to ask the question if the city of Champaign has had any discussions or considerations along these lines.
At this time, we haven't. We're kind of waiting to see what Urbana is going to do and what the commission is going to do.
That said, they did a couple years ago have a discussion along these lines and decided not to because Urbana stepped up and was willing to take on the financially taxing components of it.
Okay.
And there was some similar discussion about the value of having people that are focused on this issue, but I do not have that in front of me, so it might be worthwhile for us to try and track that down after this meeting and share it with the other commissioners. So with that on the table, so I spoke with Mr. Hess, the IT director for the city of Urbana, about the specific issues that brought that to the table, but also about what at least my vision was when I got involved with the commission and what I would hope to see going forward. And we came to a tentative, an idea of something that we thought might present value to the city councils while eliminating the burden on the cities, which is it's been a rough couple of years. I think the business community had a rough couple of years in the late 2000s, and the government is having some rough years now. It seems like nothing's breaking either city's way really in the last few years, and they're looking for every opportunity to pinch a few pennies. So we and I support that. So anything we can do to help in that regard is a good thing to do in general. Specifically, the requests or the most burdensome thing for them was the taking of the minutes. So we would, if we were to move forward, I would suggest it would be very important that we find a way to take our own minutes that doesn't take paid city staff time. And the meetings would still potentially be recorded, and so that would facilitate those minutes, the minutes taking. The other item that I don't remember whether it was more of an issue for Sanford or for me, but I don't find it doesn't feel good to me to go through this agenda and not have any really meaty items. It feels like a waste of everyone's time to show up when there's not something concrete and impactful to both the citizenry and potentially the city councils to dig into. I think some of the both staff and commissioners have expressed that related to the fact that the representatives of the two franchisees are not reliably showing up at the meetings. I personally don't. I guess I don't see that as a requirement for us to have a valuable meeting. It seems to me that they do show up when they have something to say. They would show up if we had something specific to ask them, at least in my experience. They usually apologize for not being able to come to the meeting if they can't come. And so if we made a point of inviting them and saying that we would like them to provide some information, I've never found them to be not willing to do that. But we have to provide the other half of that coin, that we have not actively brought important issues to the agenda and then brought a report on those issues up to the city councils. And that can be as little as there are FCC rulings every couple of months that have a significant impact on the direction that this industry is going, that the video and telecommunications industries are going. Those should be explained to the city council members so that when they are talking about these items, they understand, well, 10 years ago it was this way, but it's not going to be that way in 10 more years, so we shouldn't be worrying about, or we should be worrying more about some specific aspect of it. So that was another component was that we would need to try to produce more from a content perspective, because if all we're doing is holding chairs, then I think it does make sense to not be doing that. That doesn't provide much value to anybody. So, and I guess the last item is that there's a concern that because I own a company that does internet, which is now a telecommunications facility, so even more than before, this is a valid concern. There may be some bias on my part. I don't think I stump my own company when I'm here, and it's definitely not an unreported conflict of interest. But I'm happy to I would rather not be chair, actually. I don't like that role because I'm not always on time, and I hate that. I'm the one who's holding up the meeting. So there was a suggestion that I should step down as chair, and we have a different chair, and I wholeheartedly support that for a variety of reasons. I'm happy to open the floor to others.
I don't see the conflict. To me, it's having some expertise. I mean, if you step down and we want somebody else that knows the industry, they're going to have a conflict in some spidery part of the business. I mean, we aren't going to be doing anything that impacts ISP's bottom line here, at least not directly. We aren't going to be making recommendations. So I don't say if it's just appearance, somebody has to explain the appearance to me, because I don't even get it.
Well, I think one of the things that Peter discussed when we talked about this is, in one way that we can make the commission more meaningful is to truly embrace the telecommunications part of it as well, such that the commission is really providing guidance to councils that says these are the trends in this industry, and for example, what are, under telecommunications, as Peter mentioned, fiber really is part of this discussion. And there's an opportunity for this commission to provide educational presentations to council saying, here's the trends that are going on in the fiber industry that impact your investment in the fiber in the ground and the cable industry, and this is how it impacts the citizens of the area. But if we expand that definition of telecommunications to include fiber, which makes sense, Peter does have a company that installs fiber. And so, then he'd be making the commission would be making recommendations about topics in which he has a direct financial interest.
Well, except we'd be recommending topics, not vendors or business investments or, the only conflict I can see is if there was money in here somehow, and I don't see any correlation at all between what we're doing, any kind of educational function, and any way somebody's company would benefit from it. So I guess maybe somebody does, but I think it's a real stretch.
I have a question. I think one of the major issues, at least that's when I came on board, is that the cable companies use the right-of-ways that are public right-of-ways. And they're basically belong to the citizens of these two communities. And that's why it was a joint commission, because we do a joint contract with these providers. And I know that at the time, we could only tax the television segment of it, which would be the cable. But because they started interchanging, providing television on their phone cables, AT&T doesn't pay that in easement because they've always had that right of way for telecommunications. They weren't paying the television video aspect of it. And then all of a sudden cable started providing phone over IP, and basically that was not being taxed. But there's revenue being generated by these two municipalities regarding profits that these two entities that are part of doing business in Champaign County are doing. So I think that the commission served as a buffer between the citizens and their services and these telecommunication companies. So I think we played a crucial role. But if the cities don't feel that we have that role anymore and the providers are not here, and there might be a conflict of interest because a third company might come in, I don't know, do you do satellite or do you also do cable fiber?
We don't yet do video on our network at all.
Has the city approached you in any one way to start paying a tax or a fee for the use of their right-of-ways?
So
once
we
you start laying
pay
your cable?
there. and this is also relevant to Comcast. So Comcast, for their phone, they do pay a tax on the phone service they provide. And we pay a tax on the phone service we provide. We don't pay a tax on the internet service we provide. If we were to offer video, we would pay the video tax, and I'm certain that AT&T does pay that tax as well for their video product. They don't pay it for, nobody pays any taxes on the internet products that they offer.
Right.
And the big challenge from a financial standpoint for the cities and the relevance where some money might come into this discussion is that at some point most of the video that people consume will no longer be via the franchisee, via Comcast or AT&T directly. It'll be via an Apple TV or via a Google TV or something like that, where they're getting their video content. So right now there's Sling TV from Dish. There's PlayStation Vue from Sony, and these are both more or less cable equivalent products that allow you to no longer buy a cable subscription, and the revenues from those don't generate a tax that goes to the cities. The FCC is going to have to deal with that at some point because it's a significant source of revenue for all of the communities, that basically for every community in the U.S. And we need to be, I believe that we should be helping our communities make the decisions about how they want to push that forward, to the extent that they do want to push that forward, because they are losing revenue, but they're not losing it to AT&T and Comcast. They're losing it to Apple and Netflix and those.
But in order for you to
providers.
get Apple and Netflix, you still need some kind of wiring to your house.
Which
And
is not taxed.
Which is, pardon?
And the internet feed, though, is not taxed.
It's not taxed for AT&T, but for cable it is.
No, it's not.
But the television aspect
The
is.
television is. So if you have a bill and it's $50 television, $50 internet, you're going to be taxed on the television and not on the internet.
But and then looking at the citizenry, they use this commission to file their complaints against poor service by the providers. And I remember, them coming up in front and giving me those late night phone calls saying, they changed my box, they raised the fees. And we were the buffer because we had the providers here in the room and said, could you respond to some of these complaints? What is the difficulties when you have this checkered square on the screen and it freezes and we're not getting any internet and we're losing, viewing hours weekly because this freeze or this checkerboard freeze on it. So I think that we were providing a service to the community because we were able to relate to them what the networks were doing and what was going on with their television providers and their boxes in their box exchange. I remember cable was one of those that you could return the box right here on Ray Street to them and basically get a new one or return your equipment there. And it was a face-to-face customer service. Well, we couldn't force cable to do that because AT&T didn't have an office here that you could do that and exchange the equipment. And when we started putting that pressure on AT&T bypassed the commission, bypassed the city of Champaign, bypassed Urbana, and went down to Springfield and said, hey, you cannot regulate us. And we don't have to provide service to the entire city. We will cherry pick and only provide service to those households that pay, that could afford it and pay our services, and we could market that, but we're not going to let you know the blueprint of our marketing strategy. And I think that cable had issues with that because they're saying we provide service to anybody that wants services. And, we're open and transparent, but if you're not obligating one, you can't obligate us either. So I think all along through the process, and I think I've been sitting on this commission probably 8 years, that we've been losing ground as a commission, and now that the cities are beginning to talk about bailing out, we have the providers not here today regarding, the effectiveness of us sort of putting them under pressure in camera in front of the audience to get them to respond to some of the complaints that have been submitted to us. Right now, if I was, well, I am a customer in the city of Champaign, who do I file my complaint to? The city of Champaign used to take those complaints. They don't do that anymore. And it's very difficult to get an AT&T unless you go and call India, which I have, and they're the ones that are translating to me about the numbers on my box, and they have to send somebody, and then when the guy comes into my house and starts fidgeting with the box and changes the modem, he says, it's not the modem, it's some humidity in the box, but I can't do anything about it until I change the modem 3 times. And he would sit there and change that modem 3 times, and I still was not getting any reception, losing services, and I was highly upset, and I'm pretty sure people are tired of talking with Indian representatives in India and not in the United States and not in Champaign, like we had with Comcast. Comcast, we were able to have that customer service face-to-face. So for me, if we're not going to be effective, we're just going to be an informative board, I would have to resign, because that's not what I signed up for. I didn't sign up here just to be proactive, and then when the council, provide council with information and feedback. I think we were serving as a safety valve for the community, not so much for the city and the municipalities that are making $450,000 Champaign makes in those profits, which they charge 3%. Urbana charges 5%, and I know, I don't know, maybe you all could help me, how much profits do they make off of the providers? I think it's about $350,000. But they put it into UPTV. Champaign puts it into the government system that they have, which is, one of the PEG channels. We have the opportunity to bring a 5th channel, which that occurs every time we do a contract. We just signed a contract for 10 years, several years ago, and we could have probably had more bite into it, where they could have probably provided the 5th PEG channel, but there was no push from either of the cities, even though the commission wanted it, even though the community wanted it. I know UPTV could use some better equipment to loan out to the citizenry of Urbana, and they not only loan it to Urbana, but they loan it to Champaign County. Anybody that could check it out, they could use it, to their use, and give the opportunity for anybody in this community to view and program their shows. So for me, this commission has lost all the things that they did have. We used to have a $7,000 budget. I don't know where that went to. We used to be able to send a commission on an annual basis to a telecommunication conference, and they would bring back a lot of updated information as to what the latest trends were. I don't know about how to get additional information unless I Google it, and I think anybody could Google. And I think the council members and aldermen could Google. But the opportunity to have a commissioner be trained and sent out to network with other national providers, cable providers, I thought it was beneficial to not only this commission, but it was beneficial to the communities, both Urbana and Champaign. So I would personally like to see both providers here every time we have a meeting, so that they could respond to, why am I talking to somebody in India? And why am I having problems with my cable or my AT&T services? Or is it a cheaper way to bundle my internet services as well as my phone and my television? And I go back from one to the other, and I keep flipping, because even though it's net neutrality, they're trying to project that it's a little faster, so you have to pay a little more. And then the tiers of programming that you actually get, you're getting tiers that, ESPN, I don't watch ESPN, but you got ESPN 1, 2, 3, 4 in the football games and the baseball games. I don't want to pay for those because I don't watch them, but they're part of the bundling system that one of the providers has. So I think there's a lot of work that this commission could do, other than to provide just input to the aldermen and the council members. I want to provide information to the citizens of this community, information that is beneficial to them, and as well as informative to us. And they have to respond to that. And I would like to see and hear, and probably postpone item B that was not, basically through the Open Meetings Act, we cannot add anything to the agenda because it wasn't advertised 2 days ahead of time, 48 hours. And then we will be curtailing the Open Meetings Act, because if that was on the agenda, I'm pretty sure there might have been a couple people here saying, I want to be able to nominate some people too. So I would say that until we hear from Champaign and we hear from Urbana in the affirmative, that this commission is going to continue intactfully the way the bylaws were written and guided. And then I think it's just a wait and see type of situation. Champaign is doing a wait and see, and there is a memo that is being passed between the aldermen and the mayor in Urbana that is still undecided. But if they pull out, and then, we're not going to be walking with one leg. We need both legs, and we need the 100% support of both municipalities. And we need for these companies that do business in Champaign-Urbana to be responsive to the community. That's my take on it.
I agree with you, and we brought this up at the last meeting. I said I was disappointed that the operators weren't here, but your comments about kind of our relationship with the public, in the past, that some dramatic things happened with it. I don't know if any of you were living here, 30 years ago. 100 people in the Champaign City Council chambers and the poor people from Cablevision sitting there, and I think it was over bringing in boxes. And I mean, this was must-see TV. It was televised even then, and thanks mainly to Brian Silverman and a congressman, that kind of pressure caused Cablevision to back down. And we were one of the last communities where Cablevision came in, and finally, after they got over their shell shock, some years later they came in and pushed the boxes on everyone. But this was, the commission rallied people, and the pressure, and it had nothing to do with what we were legally allowed to do, just had to do with public pressure. And maybe those days are over. Maybe we will never get a rabble-rousing crowd again because somebody wants to add a channel or add some technology. But I think some of the same things could still be happening. And I think sending the representative to Natoa, I think, was a great value. I mean, the few times I went, it's huge education. But even when someone else went, could come back and talk about it and bring back the materials, and you can read it on the internet, but it's not the same. That's something we've lost, and we would be more on top of things, I think, if we still had that annual contact and that involvement with the industry.
And that's the reason we wanted to have the University Channel and Parkland Channel, because those channels were part of the PEG 4 series that we had, that we actually printed information, a little a bookmark, I remember, that had the PEG channels and what was being advertised through our commission. So we submitted those in the public libraries, at schools, saying these are your public access channels. Take advantage of them, view them, get involved with local government. And that also went out the window, because I guess it's now more docile, where you have to access the website and the cities to access the cable commission or anything pertaining to the PEG channels is buried. And I remember that some of the AT&T did not want to carry PEG channels, because they were pretty much being provided by Comcast. So now they are, because of a lot of complaints from the citizenry. But to me, we provide not only a service to the cities, but we provide a service to the companies that do business with the cities, and the majority of the services is to the people in this community, and I think we owe it to them.
Well, we used to have, it wasn't too long ago, we had 8 meetings a year. We had 4 meetings and always 4 study sessions, and the study sessions were full of content. I think Rick used to sometimes call them dog and pony shows. We had videos, we had outside experts come in, and some of that came from what people learned at Natoa, and would come back, we'd talk about issues, and we'd get people to come in, and we would have sometimes an audience in here of, 3, 4 people, but a little bit bigger TV audience, and people were, a lot of this is when digital was coming in, and people were totally confused, and then HD, and things were changing very fast, and those were very informative. We probably don't have 4 study sessions worth a year now, but probably a couple I would think we could come up with some important issue and something that people are interested in and that affects what they pay for their entertainment and their internet. And we could explore that and get some people in here and talk about it.
And I'd like to emphasize that that was what Chair Folk and I talked about when we met last week. You know, the vision in which the vision that we laid out for the commission is targeted towards next July. The commission has an annual report that it is supposed to prepare by July of each year. And from my understanding, that's not been prepared for a few years. But the vision that we talked about was to re-engage on those things, to get the study sessions going, to have what Peter described as sort of the meat in the meetings, such that there's real information being discussed, and this commission is bringing forward good information and putting that in the annual report to council. And if that scenario plays out, I will fully support the staff time of, you know, organizing the meeting and attending these meetings and things like that. But I don't, you know, and I wrote the memo. Now, the memo has actually not been sent to any of the council members. The memo was written, you know, I shared with the mayor, she, you know, discussed it with me, but I sent it to this commission first so that you had the opportunity to discuss these things before it went to council. So it has not gone out to council. I would fully support the effort of this commission to re-engage and give content to these meetings. But if these meetings don't go that direction, don't have the content, can't produce a report by July, that's the scenario where I think we just have to reflect that times have changed. This has become a much more complex discussion topic in general, and there's so many, and we just had this discussion earlier within this meeting, there's some parts that are taxed and some parts that are not taxed, and there's a lot of conflation about, well, you know, am I getting internet? Is this cable? Is this TV? Is it video? There's a lot of terminology that overlaps. So there is an opportunity for this commission to bring some clarity to that so that the decision makers and the citizens understand what those impacts are. But that's something that you as a commission really need to bring out. You know, you're the commission members. This is, you know, and so that's my challenge to the commission, is to take on this large task of trying to re-engage and make something meaningful about this before July. If you are on board with that task, I will fully support and work with you to make that accomplishment to the best of my ability. But if you're not willing to take on that task, then, you know, that's when I'll send the memo to council and just say, you know, things have moved on. And just to clarify one thing, even in one thing that we will continue to provide as a service to the citizens is to be that the communicator to the cable companies of complaints. So it is a function that Urbana is doing now, and we have offered to continue to doing it even if Urbana withdraws from the commission. We will still provide that outlet for citizens to complain. We will forward the complaints on, and needless to say, they get a little more attention when they come from us on behalf of the citizens than sometimes just from the citizens directly.
So you also do it on behalf of Champaign or just Urbana?
Champaign tends to send the complaints, send them to us to do that effort.
So and then on local television, I could tell the citizens that they could call Urbana for their complaints on both AT&T and cable.
That is a true statement.
And you will communicate that to the providers,
As we have
indicating
been
that
doing
they're
for
providing
some
poor
time,
service
sure.
to our communities.
Yeah,
Though
I'm-
I would suggest that if the I'm sorry, I don't
You're fine. You're
sorry.
the chair.
Okay. I think even so, I'm supposed to, I don't know. You know, it used to be that if you wanted to have something to say, you had to stand.
Good.
Those were the good old days,
Those days are
you
over.
know, 1700s.
Don't do that because the video will get all.
Okay.
you'll just, yeah.
I would suggest that even that is a failing of the commission. It shouldn't be the city staff that are doing that. That is our job. That is what, like, the only way that I know whether people are having a terrible Comcast experience are, I figure there's 20,000 households in Champaign-Urbana. If I hear from one of them a year, which is about what I hear from, maybe 2 a year, then they must be doing a pretty good job. What we should be saying is not call Urbana, but call your commissioner because it's our job to represent the citizens in that fight. So,
But those really, I would have to refute that because I think it's the responsibilities of the banks, which is Urbana and Champaign, that receive those fundings from these providers. And I think they should provide additional staff time to be able to intake that because that's what they were doing before. Because I don't want to have the people calling me at 2 or 3 in the morning and stay on the phone 1 or 2 hours like they have done. And I'm like, okay, ma'am, I will try to get that done. You know, that $12 box is no longer, you know, good on cable, you know, but I know that some of my providers, they do a good job in communicating with me and resolving a lot of the problems that I submit to them. But I think the city also has an obligation to respond to their citizens because they're getting the 5% and 3% profits from these companies. And these companies are bleeding a lot of these senior citizens that are out here and they had to get rid of their old television or get a cable box.
I can see that perspective.
So you
as
can't
well.
just put it on the commissions. I don't want phone calls 24 hours, 24/7. I don't work for the cable company, and I don't work for the city, and I don't get paid for that. I get paid to arbitrate and make sure that the process works, not only for the cities, but for the commission and for the providers. You know, but they need one phone where they could call, and they know that if they call at 10 in the morning, it will get recorded, that if they call, I work from 8 to 5. You know, I can't be answering calls while I'm at work. And after 5 o'clock, I got a family I got to deal with, and I got other commissions and other meetings too, than to be dealing with citizens' complaint on a daily basis of some of the providers that are providing poor to no service. I know AT&T provides very poor service. And they're individuals that come to your house, they work out of their van. They don't have a station. They just work out of their van, and they go to their jobs from job to job. That's the way they do it, you know. So I could feel for that senior citizen that is 80 years old, that is used to watching a television show, and now is on a different tier, that at a different price, and is being fleeced. You know, don't call me for that. You know, I don't know how much the city could do about that, but if you're now providing that service, I would like the audience to know that they could call you, or they could call you, the city of Champaign.
Well, I would say that it's been going on for some time in that manner. So, but, you know, I think you brought up a good distinction between the types of things that the cities can take action on and the things they can't. If someone has defective equipment, I mean, there's not much we can do unless the cable company is refusing to take action. But in terms of complaints about moving channels between tiers, we can communicate those complaints. You know, and again, I mean, with whatever weightiness that comes from coming from the city, I don't know how far that carries. I know there was a discussion even here at the commission a few meetings ago with regards to WGN moving to a different tier. You know, and again, it gives us an opportunity to confront the providers with that feedback. But I think we also need to be realistic about what the power of this municipality or any municipality or this commission is to get these national companies to change their decisions about how they market and sell their products.
Well, even better would be to confront them here. I mean, to have them sit here and have us go through the complaints and say, you know, maybe we can't regulate this, we can't force you to not change tiers, but here's what's happening if you're concerned about your customers, and they have to come up with an answer. And I think in the past, I think they have, even when it wasn't their policy, they've passed that on to corporate. So maybe it's a grain of sand on the beach, but it's a start. But I think having a forum here is better than just, okay, we'll file something with the city of Urbana and we'll forward it on to them by email or something. It doesn't have the same, I don't think it has the same punch.
Well, go.
So over the years, I've noticed that the number of complaints also has dramatically gone down. And you mentioned that it was standing room only when there were cable boxes, whether the issue was whether people would have to have a cable box or not. And now, for the most part, as far I understand it, everybody has a cable box in everything. To me, I don't feel like I hear enough on these topics from the the citizenry. I mean, I can form my own opinion. I can form what is maybe an expert opinion, but that's, you can get an expert that will say many different things. What really I would like to be able to bring to the table is, this is what our communities actually think, and it's in the law that is our job to do community needs assessments, to actually figure out what it is that people actually want, not just the people who happen to send me, they're looking at the list of commissioners and they think Folk's a nice name, so they click my email address. I don't know how people choose to, maybe I guess I'm the first one on the list probably, but I'm the chair, right. So if they
And when they
feel
call me, I refer them to you.
Okay, well, there we go.
Yeah, I think they look for women because they think I'll be more understanding.
I know I don't get as many citizen contacts, documentable citizen contacts on this topic as I think I need to adequately represent truth here in this commission. And so that's part of what you talked about dog and pony shows. The reason we don't do those anymore is that we haven't done them. It was the cable company that was trying to sell us on the changes that they were making. They are the ones who put the effort into that, and I think Rick also had a better role than I did in that.
We actually, I went out when digital was coming in. I went out and recruited 4 guys. I got a guy from Good Vibes, a university professor. We put the show on, and the
Well, we
cable
need to do
people
that.
sat here and watched and then answered questions, and we kind of tried to tie in what they had talked to us about trends and asked whatever the cable company was back then, what are you keeping up with this and what are you doing? And there was some kind of good back and forth. And there were times when the cable company came in with their videos and tried to impress us with how many new shopping channels they were adding. But several of those we did ourselves, and they were a lot of work, but I thought I learned a lot from them, and I got comments from other people in town that actually watched them.
Well, my read on Sanford's challenge is, are we willing to do those kinds of things? And while I tend to overcommit myself, I think they would be very valuable, and especially given the major changes that are going on in people's daily patterns of use of this stuff, I think they're well deserved. I mean, there are really different ways that you can consume media today than a year ago. It's almost mainstream now to do things like Netflix and that kind of thing. We absolutely, I believe, it would be valuable for us to spend the time to get somebody from Good Vibes and somebody from Best Buy and Premier Sound. I don't want to bias anybody. I don't think this is being broadcast, so I'm safer there. If we can get them to do that and maybe plug the local businesses a little bit, but whatever it is, we have to do it. We have to commit to doing it, and we haven't. And maybe that's my failing, but it's not something I feel we can blame on the cities or the providers.
Well, what you mentioned before might be a great first topic, or what you just mentioned now. I mean, how many people know that they don't have to pay $180 to Comcast every month, that they could get Amazon Fire or Sling TV or, I mean, I don't even know. I read about this all the time, and I don't even know what all the options are. So maybe it would be good to have here's all the things there are to choose from, and here are the pluses and the minuses, and
it might be a way to get the providers in the room if they think that we're
yes, would.
threatening their revenue stream also.
I have a question. Chris? Yeah, I don't think we're receiving any complaints, not because that the system is working at 100%. I think they just got tired of calling and not getting a response. So they're not getting a response from any of the municipalities. They're not getting a response from their providers. And, and it is kind of difficult sometimes to get a hold of our cable commissioners, as well, too. I don't want to be I don't want to be cumbersome to the council or to the municipalities or to the providers. I believe in efficacy and efficiency. And if that's the case, what would happen if this commission disappears? What I would tend to do is every complaint that comes in, I would say, go to your city council and on public participation, go out there and take your neighbors and read to them as to why are you having this disservice or this discourse with your cable company. And I bet you that your municipalities will be dying to reestablish this commission to buffer that. I bet you they don't want people coming to complaining about their cable providers to their council chambers because they got better things to do. So because they got better things to do, they basically appointed us as advisors to them. What do we do? And to buffer some of that. But if I can't buffer that and then open up Pandora's box, and send them to council. Send them to go to call Laura Pressing, to call Deb Finan directly. Don't go to council chambers. Call them and keep calling them until something gets done. And I bet you they'll put you to work. They won't put me to work and call me at the university and say, hey, Mr. Rosales, that cable hasn't been turned on. And I call you on Monday and today is Thursday. They won't be calling me. So I think they just got tired of complaining and nothing gets done, and they're being fleeced by this community. And I think anybody that does business in Champaign-Urbana should be regulated by the municipalities. And I have to put certain blame on the municipalities that they're going to abandon this commission. And if they're going to abandon, I'll be the first one to walk away, and I'll bet you I'll send them all to the mayor's office to go ahead and complain. And I'll look at the camera. I think that's the way up, but I think there's a more amicable way to do it. I think it's a more civil way to do it. I don't think you need to get upset. And usually the squeaky screw that gets the oil, and if there's a problem, I'm pretty sure a lot of the providers, I think Art has been excellent, and it's been wonderful to work with Art. He's been here at every meeting. He's been very informative. He's been very patient. I've sent them people that ripped out my ear in conversation, and I know they ripped out his ear, but the problem got resolved. So I know that Art is there to troubleshoot a lot of the calls that we get, but there's a lot more calls that come in and is from people that are just fed up with it. That's my two cents in it. So what I move and propose, I'm sorry, Chris.
No, you're fine.
What I move and propose is perhaps instead of a report, because there's nothing to report on, we should write a memo as to our concerns to keep this commission alive. And write a very strong letter to both council members, both council and aldermen and mayors, indicating what our frustrations have been through the years, which are very many, and I'll pull out my binders from every year that I've been on this commission, and I'm pretty sure you all that are fairly new, except for Karen, and I know Chris has been here in many hats, could articulate some of our frustrations that we've had. And if not, I know that we could call Rich Atterbury out of Central Casting and ask him to come down and give some testimonials.
Something just that comes to my mind is, do we want to continue as a commission if the providers aren't part of the equation? And at this point, they don't seem to be. So do we want to continue without that being part of the equation, or do we see that there's things that we can do to make them part of the equation once again? Obviously, everything changed. Comcast was very receptive. Art was great. But when competition came to town and the rules got changed as far as who had to do what, everything changed in regards to how things were dealt with this commission. So that's just the thing that's kind of in my mind as far as the operators. Do we feel like we have a purpose if the operators don't deem us important, or is there things that we can do to for them to make them think that we're important again?
Maybe one thing we could do, we get this packet for every meeting and has the cable complaints, and as you pointed out, they've been shrinking, perhaps because of Geraldo's theory there. But usually at the meetings, we just say, okay, there's a bunch of, we've got all the paperwork and it's not mentioned. Maybe if we talked about it, here are the kinds of customer service complaints that are happening, and here's how it was resolved. If I were Art or the guy from AT&T, I'd want to be here. if we were actually having a discussion of that, not just getting a packet and putting it in the recycling bin.
I also concur with the theory. I deem it to be a whole lot like the unemployment rate. After a certain amount of time, unemployment goes down because people stop looking for work. And I do think people have gotten frustrated at the lack of activity or action that they've gotten in past complaints. With regard to the willingness to participate of the franchisees, I share those concerns, but I also have a concern about the willingness of the city to look to us for advice. I know that in the past year, when the ITV3 franchise came up for consideration, the city attorney indicated no interest at all in having us participate in that, and told council members that during the meeting on that topic. I also sent an email to the mayor immediately upon my learning of ITV3's intent to seek a franchise, and got no response at all. So there is a question in my mind as to what the city's interest is. And for my own part, I would like to see some sort of feedback from them before I'm much interested in continuing as a member of the commission.
Thank you, Dale, for those comments. We serve at the leisure of both municipalities, and if the municipalities don't feel that we're properly serving them or the citizens, and then I don't think it's up to us to determine that we want to keep going. I think is, their opportunity to have part of the citizens to come and serve at their leisure. I would hate to make a decision today or as part of a member of this commission and then dissolve this, and there will be no other opportunity for any future commissions because we made that decision. And I think it's the wrong decision to make. I think it's the municipalities that decide that decide that this is the way to go because it's part of the contract or it's part of the bylaws or it's part of some statute, that it is convenient and beneficial for them to have this advisory commission that is made up of professional people that are in the field. I know Chris has been in the field for a long time. I'm not quite sure of Karen, and I know she's been on the commission a long time regarding the nature of her job. I don't have any IT expertise other than a big mouth when I was sitting on city council, and I guess I still do. But other than that, these are supposed to be experts. We get an expert from the university, an expert from Parkland, an expert representative that would, could communicate with city councils and aldermen and be able to communicate and cut through the chase. And he said, the council is going to be full of people if you don't take action right now. So, but if they feel that I have no worth, and then I walk away. But, you can't tell me, you think you're worth it? I say, oh, yeah, I'm worth it. And then they still, don't pay any attention to the commission. They don't listen to the commission, especially when the contractual agreement and 10-year agreement, and that'll be forthcoming soon. And if we're not in place, and then, who's going to advise them? Not that they accepted our advice, but they were there and they knew that we were there and they knew that they could rely on us and some expertise regarding that. And I know Rich Atterbury was the IT in the Department of ACES when he was sitting on board. So,
And I do know that despite, while we weren't necessarily part of the negotiations for the franchise, we did do a pretty extensive needs assessment for that franchise, and I know a lot of that information was taken into account and was part of the franchise agreement.
And we didn't. You're talking about the most recent Comcast franchise,
Correct.
but not the ITV3 one.
Correct.
Right. So there's. I've heard two things that seem like we ought to bring, get the question out there and see what people actually are responding to. So, Chris asked, do we continue without the providers? Is there value that we have if they are not in those chairs? And I would suggest that we hear from everybody, but I'll take my I'll take the first step and say, I feel absolutely. I mean, I feel that it's not, we're not here for them. We're here for some combination of the city councils and the public. I wouldn't have done this if all I was doing was reporting to Comcast. I probably wouldn't have done it. I might have done it if all I was doing was reporting to the city councils, but when I took the job, it was what I imagined I was doing was I was representing the public to the councils. And to me, that, they're not even in that path. They can do whatever they want here or not. It's up to us to make sure that information about what they're doing gets up to the councils. We actually have subpoena power, technically, if we wanted to, subpoena them to provide some information. I don't know if it's ever been used, but it's in the law. But to me, the answer to do we go for, would there still be value in this commission if the providers were not actively engaged? It's yes, and we can't really expect them to be actively engaged unless we are providing that role. They're not going. It's the squeaky screw that gets the oil. We have to help create that squeaky screw if we're going to expect them to do anything other than maximize their own profits. That's my answer to that. And then there was the question that actually Dale and that Commissioners Cinder and Rosales brought up that let's go through that one with everybody and see where we stand as a commission on that question, and then I'll address the other one. So, Karen, do you have or Ms. Walker?
I agree. I don't think that they're critical here, but I think they make it. I think they make what we're doing much more practical, and I think we need to give them, as you mentioned before, have some content to the meetings and maybe talk more about the complaints, give them a reason to want to be here.
I'll also mention that we don't make much effort to get this on their calendar. They, as far as I can tell, they maybe have it on their calendar and they think, well, maybe I'll attend, but we don't check with them 2 weeks before, hey, want to make sure that you're able to attend. Not that we should really have to, maybe, but if we actually want them to attend, they're willing, as far as I can tell. It's just a matter of us trying to make that real. Go.
I think there are actually 3 legs to this stool, and the other is the public. For the time that I have served as commissioner, we have had very few members of the public actually come before us. I remember there used to be one member who showed up quite routinely, although she has not shown up recently. And I can only remember 1 or 2 other instances in which a member of the public has made an appearance to the commission. And so I would hope that we could find some way to encourage the public to attend and to express their concerns and opinions. Hopefully some will view this session and decide to attend, or at least email us with regard to their concerns.
Just one note. This is not being broadcast. It's being recorded, but it is being broadcast. So
yes, I'm aware that it's not being broadcast, but as I understand it, the intent is that it be broadcast at a later date.
Okay, I don't know that for sure, but yeah. So 3 legs of the stool, and could you? That's the public, the providers, and the council. Okay. Commissioner Rosales, regarding Chris's question, or Commissioner Foster's question, do we continue forward without providers? Is there a value to the commission if the providers are not actively engaged?
Is there anything that would require them to attend in the bylaws or in the contract that we sign as a commitment?
Not to my knowledge. I've recently reviewed the city code on the matter, and as Chair Folk mentions, we do have the power to not exactly subpoena, but to require attendance and certain information. I don't think the power exists to routinely require them to attend our meetings.
I think that, I'm looking in front of me, and I see already the meeting set from January 2016 all the way through October, January, April, July, and October. We could send them that and just send them a reminder a week, with the agenda that's going to be included. And if they would like to see anything added to the agenda, I think that Rick used to do that to the commissioners. Would you like to see anything added to the agenda prior to posting the agenda? But the meetings are already pretty much here, and it's just a matter of getting it to them. I don't want to shame them to get them here and say they don't care, and that's why they're not here. Because if I say that they don't care, they say, well, you didn't give us the benefit of the doubt because we do care, because we've never been invited. But, this is an invitation that our meetings are posted here. They should be posted on the city's website, I believe, right? They should be there, so there's no reason why you don't check once in a while to see what some of the obligations you have to the public you serve. But I think 4 meetings a year, it's not too much out of their way. I don't think that people will come into our council chambers here to report complaints, because I'm not going to wait 3 months to report a complaint and then hear from the commission or hear from the providers that I could look at them face to face and says, you're providing shabby services. But if we let them know that we also are, as a way to input complaints on these days, we could also begin to take complaints when we meet here and have public participation and be able to have, take notes and see what their complaints are. And maybe it's not a cable box complaint or a AT&T 4-foot box complaint. I think it might be at the hub, because I remember Art saying it's at the hub. It's not anything wrong with the television or the modem. It's at the hub, and they could fix it just by a simple phone call. So I don't think it's a big commitment for them that do business with Champaign to come 4 times a year. I would like to see them every time I come here. If I could set some time aside from my busy schedule to be here, I think they should here. They do business, and they're making profits off of the citizens here. That's the way I feel. Whether it's under Constitution or bylaws or, contract, it's an obligation that they have of service. And I think the city is responsible also that anybody that does business in the city needs to be in compliance, ADA, and they required, food to be certain temperatures and, and ramps to be a certain height, and no smoking in certain facilities. They impose that, and the county also imposes that. I think that we should also impose that of these providers that are using and utilizing our right-of-way. It's not too much to ask.
I certainly think we have value, even if the providers aren't here. I did pose the question, but I just really it was a thought that I thought should be discussed. That is part of the value we do provide, though, is being able to talk with the providers. When I first was involved with this in my time with Urbana, I don't remember many times when they were not here. They were here regularly, always gave a report. But like I said, when competition came to town and things, when one group didn't have to do something, then the other group felt like, well, then why do I need to do it too? So I do think there's things that we can do without the providers being here, but I just thought it was an important question to be posed. And also I was not aware that, I just thought it was a standing dates on their calendar from year to year. I just thought that, and maybe they do. I thought that they knew when we met quarterly and that they always were aware of our meeting times. So,
Chair Folk, correct me if I'm wrong, they are on the distribution list for the...
Yeah, they know about the meetings, and I normally get from the AT&T rep an apology that he wasn't able to attend, and normally it's along the lines of we didn't tell him enough in advance, and I haven't been pithy enough to go back. 3 months isn't enough in advance. But Commissioner Commissioner Rosales said that, there's a belligerent way to do it and a less belligerent way. I think the easy thing to do is we try and take ownership of the issue. We are the ones who want them here, and so let's
Well,
take-
one idea
ask
might
them.
be to actually give them something to talk about. I mean, you
Yes.
might say, we've been going through the complaints, and there are a lot of complaints about unburied cable. Yeah, maybe it'd be a good time for you to come and talk for 5 minutes about that and tell everybody. Now they would at least have a little bit more purpose than just to show up and say, the same old thing.
Okay, so the other question was if the councils don't want us, why are we even bothering? That's not really a question, but it was a expression from Commissioners Cinder and Rosales.
Well, let me relate a story from about 25 years ago when I was a member of the management of a laboratory on campus, and we had an interim director who came into the senior managers meeting one day and opened the meeting by saying that when he requests advice from people, he expects people to take it seriously and give it its due consideration and provide him with advice, and that when he receives that advice, he feels obligated to likewise give it serious consideration. Which at the time I was sort of scratching my head wondering what's this all about, because he hasn't asked us for any advice here lately. But he then went on to say that he felt no such obligation towards unsolicited advice. It's sort of like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. We can give all the advice to council that they want, or that we want, but unless it's something they are eager to consume or willing to consume, there's little point to it. I would note that the city attorney's indication that he saw no role for the commission in the latest franchise agreement did come as a response to a question from one of the council members about why the commission was not involved.
Okay, so that's an important distinction. So I think it's relevant to separate the mayors and city staff from the council proper as elected officials. I know the mayor in Urbana is an elected, in both it's an elected official, but in Urbana, she's also the chief executive. One question is, okay. Let me, go ahead.
Yeah. Could I request about a 3-minute recess here?
I think it's a great idea.
Okay.
Or seconded?
Seconded.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So moved. And everybody's back, so I will call the meeting back to order. So the basic concern is that with the proposed legislative or ordinance change and the similar motion that went through Champaign a couple years ago, we don't want to be the response from, or the thought from Commissioners Cinder and Rosales was, we're not here to toot our own horn, we're here to provide a service for the commissions or the councils, city councils, and if that service is not needed or wanted, well, it's not our choice whether it's needed or wanted. It's their choice whether it's needed or wanted. Go ahead, Senator.
I think it's a good analogy, but I think in this case, and I'm going to put off to the side the last franchise, which, was maybe a separate discussion. But in general, council is soliciting your advice in the form of a yearly report. So they are asking for advice, but no advice has been forthcoming. So I think there is an open ear from council to hear things, but again, I believe it's up to this commission to then say something.
Also, with respect to the most recent franchise agreement, whether it was indicated by council, the mayor, or city attorney, or anyone else that they wanted our advice, it is explicitly in our mandate to hold public hearings regarding that. And we did not do that. But in our partial defense, there was very little time provided between the time we became aware of this consideration and the time the councils voted on it. So I concur, we need to actually take up the load and do the work.
So if I to weigh in on that topic, I wholeheartedly agree with Sanford that when I've talked with council members, not so much the staff and mayors, with the exception of Sanford, with the legal staff and they're generally very receptive and interested in information, and I feel like we don't provide enough feedback to them because this industry does change a lot, and it has a very deep and dramatic impact on people's lives. We should be giving them information that is timely so that they recognize that we are a resource. The fact that we have not done that, it's a chicken and the egg situation. We can't expect them to depend on us if we have not stepped up to the plate in the past, and we haven't stepped up to the plate in 5 years or something like that. So we haven't really done a proactive job of getting them the information we need. Now the counter is, well, they haven't asked us, but a lot of this stuff happens. I mean, it's not top down. It's not from the councils down. It's the industry and the public are having an interaction, and it's our job to observe that interaction and do something and provide information when we think that there's something interesting going on. Well, I don't feel we've done that. And again, I'm 100%, that's me. It's on me. I feel bad about it myself, but if we're going to move forward, we as a commission have to embrace that and say we're all going to make an effort to observe these things and at least package them in an end of the year report, but probably also find when there's a common current in the industry or in the public about some topic, we ought to be the first ones that they learn about it from. They shouldn't learn about it through some law in Washington. They ought to learn about it through us, is my personal opinion. And if we were to do that, I think they would ask us when they have a question on the topic, because they would recognize that we're putting in the time to get real answers. It's my opinion.
I had a few questions. When was the last time a report was submitted?
I was told 2012.
2012. And that was the last time we actually had a real budget?
Hang on.
I believe 2013. I believe we're missing 14 and 15.
Okay.
So
I took a look, and I did find in the minutes of a 2013 minute where we did approve a report.
Okay.
In fact, I actually saw the report.
I stand corrected.
So when was our budget removed from this commission? We had a $7,000 budget, annual budget?
I do not know. That predated my time with the city.
Right, because that's part of the report, which is how did we spend their money? And we would put down that we went to NATOA, and we would put down that we did publications, and that we, were actually, registering so many complaints. That was part of our report, the financial reporting. And in lieu of a report, we also had council and aldermen on this commission that reported back to those councils. I was one of those that sat on city council that would report back, and I was appointed by the mayor during that period of time, Jerry Schweihart, that appointed me to this commission to report back to the council. So I took information from this commission back to the council because I would come to meetings. That agreement and that partnership must have dissolved some kind of way, that it's now the cities don't even want to appoint anybody. It says, free for all. And it's kind of a little crazy. I felt honored to be appointed by a mayor to do something for them. So I think it holds high on service when I'm appointed to the Serve Illinois Commission by Governor Rauner, but I was also appointed to the same commission by Pat Quinn. It doesn't matter who's in office, except it's an appointment by an important individual that is requiring my services to do a task that they don't have time or to do and they don't have staff to do. But I remember there was a council member and an alderman when I first started that would report back. I remember we had a budget that we had to be accounted for, and that was the process of reporting back so we could tell them how we spend their money and how we propose to spend it for next year. And I remember we will go ahead and part of that report would be who is going to the next NATOA meeting, because we will select that during the summer so that we could put it in the report that we need a budget for next year because we're sending commissioners X, Y, and Z to NATOA. So please grant us this budget because we're giving you a review of how your money was spent and it was in good faith. But if there's no money there, what are we reporting on? On the complaints that the providers get, that was being done online. How many meetings we hold for? What kind of report are you all looking for? That is moving you towards dissolving something that you all put together. But if you all don't feel that we're important enough to provide information to the council or to the citizens, and then dissolve this. I mean, we're doing you a favor. You're not doing us a favor. We work on your behalf. Well, we don't just work for ourselves. But I do agree with Falk that basically I think the citizens need information, and I think some of the aldermen and council would like to have the latest technology of what's going on. And I think the best people to say that is our providers, not us. We don't know what the packaging and bundling and Xfinity is. We don't know what it is unless we have those services. Or we get that bill at the end of the day that's a service charge. I didn't notice that we're paying extra money for gasoline for our garbage disposal. They're charging now an additional tax for gasoline. And unless I look at the bill, I don't know what they're charging me for. And there's additional taxes that is just not the services that they're providing. It's a bunch of other taxes and equipment that they have. And all the equipment, it seems like I'm purchasing the equipment and it's mine. So I think that was part of what was in the report, but you cannot ask us to report on something that we don't have, something that no longer is there because there's no council members on board. I think the last one that was appointed from the city of Champaign was Will Kiles. He never attended, from what I could recall. And I'm not quite, I think it was Smith that was the last one from Urbana that was appointed to this commission. I don't remember him in the distant past, but they don't come anymore. So I would have to put that pressure on the councils. So if they still want us to serve, I am willing to serve because that's all I do all day, which is serve my community in many different boards and commissions. And I don't mind doing that, and I don't mind coming back and meeting 4 times a year and doing another 4 for study sessions so that we could inform the public of new changing technology. I don't mind doing that. So if you're asking me, but if you're saying, if you don't give me a report and then, y'all go take a walk, well, then you need to reinstitute those things that we had before that were prevalent and they were the meat and potatoes of what this commission does. I don't think now it's just gravy. And it's so gravy, it's so watered down that, why are we here other than holding a seat?
You want to comment?
I'm just kind of soaking it all in. I tend to somewhat agree with Commissioner Rosales as far as if they don't feel like we have a purpose anymore, then as much as I hate to say it, then I'm not sure why you continue if the people that you're reporting to don't deem you important.
And I'll ask a question to Mr. Rosales. So, as I said, I feel that it's a chicken and the egg issue, that we have failed to do what they need from us, which is provide them with timely information. And, well, there's two things. One, they're not actually saying we want to disband the commission. It's staff that is suggesting that that is a route that the council might take. They haven't had an opportunity to even see the discussion, as far as I know yet. That said, if the question were put to them, I don't think we would have a very strong case to be made for us right now. And the question that I would ask you is, do you think it is worthwhile for us to try or the right thing to do for us to try and make that case for ourselves? In other words, set some goals of providing the kind of input that we provided in the past, and then see what the impact, see whether they start viewing us as a valuable resource at that point.
My question would be, are the other boards and commissions also do an annual report that they have to submit to the cities?
I don't know the details on all the boards and commissions, but I will tell you that a number of them do. They meet, for example, just recently there was a traffic stop task force which met in the purpose of creating a report. So there is a defined output that they're looking for from the boards and commissions. Some of them are ongoing commissions that hear, zoning discussions and things like that, which is a little different because there's sort of an interaction that comes and goes. But, I think we are more in the type where there's a concrete output that they're looking for, because we're not adjudicating on zoning hearings. We're not dealing with issues on a day-to-day basis. We are here to inform. And if the annual report has nothing more than how the commission spent money that was allocated to it, I also agree. I don't see much of a point to it. In my mind, the annual report would be more of a opportunity for this commission to digest and present the information that you've learned from your study sessions and inform council. Here is what we see as key important trends in this industry, and these are the things that we would need to educate them on. And to me, that's what should be in the annual report. That's the meat that I feel is missing, and we're just left with the gravy.
Yeah, but you can't compare the racial task force, the IDOT task force, because they had a lot of heat on them from the citizens saying there's a racial disparity. And we could go ahead and look at the dynamics of the racial disparity in Urbana in particularly, because they came to county board as well, and we created a task force, and that's why a report is needed. It's like, what were your findings? We have no findings here, other than updates. Updates we usually provided through a televised study session. I understand that you would like to have an annual report, but you can't compare one task force with the responsibilities of this commission, because that is a specifically task that is not going to be ongoing. This commission has been going for many years, running, seamless, but we just, technology has changed, and we have not changed with the technology.
One thing I would like to, comment on about the annual report is I know that there used to be a report for each channel that would be in that, just mainly what they did as far as programming, how many hours, whatnot. And while good practice for the stations and maybe for the commissioners to know, I am curious as far as what that provided the council as far as, betterment for the, I don't know exactly how to put it, but I think Dale.
Yeah. I think part of the problem is that our mandate from the city code is greatly in need of revision. The regulatory structure has changed a lot. For one thing, I have highlighted here the section on reports in city code. Comes under section F, powers, duties, and functions, subsection 6. Submit an annual report within 60 days from the Cable and Telecommunications Commission. Receipt of grantees report to the city councils, which shall include but not be limited to the total number of hours of utilization of access channels, a review of any plans submitted during the year by the grantee, and for development of new services, and hourly subtotals for various programming categories. So it's basically a report on a report.
Right, and I do recall that Urbana received some accolades and commendations regarding some public programming about a year ago, and they were showing those nationally award-winning programming that they presented in NATOA. And NATOA was something that we had membership of, that was part of our budget, that we paid not only for sending a commissioner, but membership of NATOA to participate and submit our stuff as well, too.
So,
With regard to budget, the following section has to do with budget. It requires us to submit an annual budget request. And so it's my recollection that it's been indicated to us that there's no money available to fulfill a budget request, but by darn, I'd sure go ahead and submit one anyway. The most they can do is say no.
Well, one thing we used to do with and it is easier to write a report when you have a budget that funds activities, but we used to do a lot more publicity and public engagement. We had an insert hyping the PEG channels in the cable bills. We did a website. We did the bookmarks. I think one time we even had a booth at the Sweet Corn Festival. I mean, we were getting the word out, and I think the PEG channel's profile has suffered in recent years. From before, people were finding information on it in their cable bills, but the city didn't print that for us. We printed that out of our own $5,000 budget.
But
I can't remember for sure, but I feel like maybe Comcast had indicated they were no longer going to be able to do the inserts, but I can't say if that's for sure.
I think, yeah.
But that was one of the big things we spent our budget on.
The main reason I think that the profile of those channels has waned is that people no longer channel surf with the up and down arrow of their thing. They use the guide, and you don't see the channel show up. Like as a child, I always wondered what that UI7 channel was. It always had something weird on it, often like a different language. It was really wild. But I knew about it because you had to go from 3 to 8 or whatever the channels were. I don't do that anymore. Everything's DVR'd, so it's a matter of not keeping up with the times. The PEG channels are still producing great content. I think both stations have received NATOA awards this year, or maybe one station received a NATOA award and one received an award from a different national organization. But they're both producing great content. Champaign is still a member of NATOA and still sends somebody to NATOA, but it's not a cable commissioner. It's somebody from the Champaign staff. And I feel like if we requested it this year, if we put in a budget request in right now, that would be a bad move. We would be asking for trouble. But if we make some strong, it would be bold. If we made some strong cases that we're a valuable resource to the councils, then we could conceivably say, and in years past we got a lot of good value from NATOA. They sent me the first year I was on the council, and I'll agree. It was an amazingly informative experience, and I wouldn't know a lot of the stuff that I know now on this topic. I learned a lot of it at that conference somehow. I don't know. I don't even know how, but I do think it's a valuable thing to do, but I don't think it's something we are in a place to ask for right now, because we haven't done our annual report of the last few years, and we haven't been the first person that they hear from about new trends in either the industry. We haven't effectively collected complaints. I agree with you that probably complaints have diminished because of apathy, because, you know, you're only going to cry wolf a certain number of times, and then you're just going to let him eat your foot. We as a commission, if we want something to change in that area, we need to raise the profile of the complaints, and we need to be the resource that they need, if not even if they're not explicitly asking for it. They haven't explicitly said we don't want this stuff. They have just not explicitly asked for it. That's my 2 cents.
I would help you with that report if that's what they need, and be able to also put future requests of changes that we would like to propose as a commission to both cities regarding moving forward. You could ask for a report, but we would like to have some support, not only financially but morally, and be able to reestablish a lot of the things that were there before, and as a request, so that when we report, we could report on all 4 PIG channels, what they're doing, what awards they've done, and that's how the community gets what they're receiving from their franchise agreement of that 5% or 3% that they're getting each city is benefiting from it. And that's part of that report. That report includes Champaign and Urbana and how those PEG channels are utilized, not just the activity of the commission. If you want just the activity of the commission, we have done very little in 4 meetings. And so we give you a report of what we did in 4 meetings. I mean, it's just looking at the agenda. But we also need to file the complaints that they received and what types of complaint. I believe at one time we used to break them down into different categories. As well. And I think that's important too, because it might be a hub problem or a system problem or humidity or moisture or a box problem or a modem problem or equipment. So I think that report that you're asking for is a lot more extensive than just the 4 meetings that we meet on an annual basis. So when you ask me for a report, I'm just sort of laughing and say, wait a minute, everything is not in place for us to create a report, especially put it off on Falk, to go ahead and write one and pull a rabbit out of his hat. I don't think that's possible. But we're all here as volunteers to assist you with that. You could probably draft something so that we could look at, and then add onto it, and then you could also get the cities to provide you with additional information that you probably don't know of, all of the things that they do on a regular basis, or what they announce on their PEG channels. Because I do remember that the Champaign used to make announcements for their PEG channels on their site as well, and then they did these more informational things about the city, because it was a city government channel. But they also did some advertisement on the commission and the PEG channels altogether. And then, as well as we could put it to the bumper for the providers, we could put it to the bumper for Parkland and the U of I. What I've heard from the U of I is that it's only students that are enrolled in the College of Communication in that semester that are able to use that PEG channels. That's why you saw a lot of weird stuff, because these were just undergraduate students experimenting. And it wasn't open to all university students. And they had the state-of-the-art equipment, and they had accessibility to that PEG channel, and it wasn't utilized by the entire community. It wasn't even utilized by all students in the College of Communication. It was only utilized by those students that paid tuition. So it was very difficult for them to give a report of what their little class projects were semester-wise, maybe 30, 40 students.
Well, the whole channel used to be canned Scola news reports for years and years. Maybe that's the weird stuff
95%
here.
Scola, I
Yeah, the
remember that.
Romanian
They
news.
were grilled for that for years.
Yeah.
They changed because of it.
I'd like to note that I think, at least from Urbana's perspective, we're very proud of our PEG station, but it's also well represented by the UPTV Commission. So we actually have an entire commission dedicated to UPTV. And so I would also see some duplication of effort if this commission were to deem it necessary to report on the PEG channel use of Urbana. I understand the idea of aggregating the reports from other entities makes some sense. But I think that we need to also be aware that there's already that communication to council going on about UPTV on an ongoing basis.
But you have to understand that this is a joint commission, so your information is very valuable to Champaign. And perhaps they could learn something from Urbana, because we've been trying to also force Champaign to be much more public access like Urbana. And we're very proud in this community, in both cities, of what UPTV is doing. And I think, again, it's an award-winning, productions, and we're very proud of the work that you do, but one doesn't substitute for the other. Even if it's replicated, at least now it's being shared by the commission, it's been shared by the city of Champaign, and they could look at the good work that you're doing. Because what they're doing, they're close. It's a governmental access, and that's it. Nobody from the outside could come in, use their equipment, or do anything with that. Because it's only run for city council and board meetings, and that's it. So we're trying to get also the city of Champaign to be a little bit more open with all those fundings that they get from these providers to provide the citizens with an opportunity to do their own programming of their programs and activities in their community. And again, you all do a fabulous job, but I would hate you not to report anything of the things that you do in your commission, in your city, and not report it to the city of Champaign and the commission itself. So it's not duplicated.
I'm going to have to leave in a few minutes, so I apologize for that. But I did want to note, which I mentioned this at the last meeting as well, but while I am on the commission, I am a representative of Parkland, and that is a concern that I do have if this does dissolve, is where does Parkland stand as far as in the road of information? I don't foresee anything happening in this regard, but it just, you just never know what happens over time. Let's say the next franchise comes up and Comcast says, we need some channels back. Champaign, why don't we do this, do that? We'll give you some more money, and we'll eliminate that Parkland channel. And then it's done, signed, sealed, and then I get an email that says, hopefully that's not something that occurs. I'm just obviously putting a worst case scenario out there. But not having this and not being able to be a representative of Parkland on a commission like this would lose my information highway, and as far as something like that is in regard to that.
I'm hearing considerable enthusiasm from 5 members of the commission with regard to continuing and hitching up our horses to the wagons. Mm-hmm. And so it's my understanding the initiative to consider no longer supporting the commission in Urbana originated with you, Sanford. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. I brought the action item up in terms of bringing it to council.
Yeah.
It was brought to me by staff on the recommendation of Rick Atterbury, the former chair.
Yeah. At this point, what's your feeling with regard to this meeting and what's been talked about here? And it's...
How long do you have, Chris?
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I'll make it very brief. My feeling is that I'm encouraged at the desire to engage. At the same time, I feel that there needs to be a commitment to do that. Were there to be a January meeting and we have the same type of agenda we've had before, and a March meeting and it's the same type of agenda we've had before, I don't see anything changing. Okay, so I see a real opportunity here. I'm thrilled at the vibrant discussion that we've had. I'd like to see some concrete results from that, some kind of commitment, motion, decision by this commission in terms of its own future. And I would always welcome that, should I proceed to submit my memo of recommendation to council, that the commission may, as Commissioner Rosario pointed out, come out with a sort of response or other inputs, and I encourage that. I want this to be a discussion.
With that, I would propose that we schedule another special meeting for the purpose of working on a annual report to get ourselves up to date with respect to that requirement. And would so move.
I would second that.
Would that be for 2015?
That would be for 2015. I don't think I see a whole lot of point in going back to 2014 and filling that hole.
Okay.
Can that be the January meeting? I mean, we were already talking before about one of the changes to make is not having 4 meetings if we didn't have 4 meetings worth of good stuff. Without that,
Sure.
what's coming up in January?
When we say the reports for 2015, are we meaning 15, 16, the report that would be due in whatever June, July of 16? Is that what we're referring to?
It would be the report which would have been due
So we're talking 14, 15, not 15, 16?
just 15. Or one report terminating in the year 2015.
Okay.
The report that would have been filed in July of 2015.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Any other discussion on the topic? We haven't, I don't think the motion didn't address the timing of that meeting. It suggested a special meeting, not the regular meeting, but, so it didn't address the time.
So can I, just for my understanding, so am I understanding that we're talking about making our January meeting that of putting a report together to make up for the one that was not handed in last year? So my understanding from you then that it's not moving forward then in November, that there's time being given for us to
I don't want
get
him
our
to
ducks
answer
in a
that
row?
yet.
No, okay, you don't want him to answer that yet? Okay.
I don't know how Robert's Rules works with this, but I would
I-
suggest that the mover and the second might want to withdraw the
Yeah.
motion and first make a motion accepting the challenge of re-engaging ourselves with the cities and the public and the providers, the 3 legs of the stool that you mentioned.
Yes, yes. I think that's an appropriate way to proceed, and I withdraw my motion.
And I withdraw my motion to the motion.
So do you want to make a different motion? This is why I hate being chair.
Yeah.
Put a January date on it?
How about I move in an effort to affirm a different direction in this engagement, that we devote the main agenda item in the January meeting to finishing up this report and perhaps working on some kind of document that outlines what we're going to be doing in the future.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 That was the second by Foster. Is that correct?
Are there other motions or discussions on the topic of the future of the Cable Commission? Go ahead.
I was going to say, Commissioner Walker talked about some of the study sessions that have been in the past. Maybe another appropriate one would be to schedule one of them for March, or I'm sorry, April. When's our meeting? April. Such that, given, 4 months is a good amount of time to plan something that could be, as you got to line up speakers and figure out who's going to be there and what the topics are. So
So that could be another agenda item for January.
Right, that's what I would think.
Yeah, talking about topics for that.
I don't want to move too far ahead.
So the motion from Commissioner Walker then is an additional agenda item for the January meeting.
Yeah,
You
although, I
don't
mean, do
have
we
to-
really need a
don't
motion
need
just
a
to have an
motion.
agenda
Yeah.
item added?
No. no.
You're the king, you can add them.
Yeah.
We could always suspend the rules.
Um,
Believe me, I've considered that.
I think with the number of mistakes I make, they're already kind
You're
of
fine.
in. Anyway,
Well,
So,
I'll put it in the record then that I also think it's a very good idea, and if I am chair at that time, I'll make sure that there are also agenda items for identifying key changes in the industry that would benefit from a dog and pony show, and suggesting times for such.
And let's come up with another name for it.
Oh, I think it's good.
I guess it's kind of descriptive.
Yeah.
and so then one other agenda item would be elections within the commission?
Sure.
Yeah, that takes about 30 seconds.
Not if your king is advocating. I'll address the bias thing. So I definitely have felt pushback from city staff that I am not representing the interests of the community. I'm representing the
Really?
interests of myself. And so even if I know that I'm representing the interests of the community as best I can, given the experiences I've had, and even if you think that I'm doing that, the fact that one of the three legs of our stools doesn't trust me, to me says that I'm bad in this role. And even if I would continue to be a valuable member of the commission, which I think that's the case, the fact that these recommendations come from me as chair, it taints them. And
Chairman Folk, one, I think that there's a perceived conflict of interest. I don't think it's an economic conflict of interest, so I don't think that it is a conflict of interest. And if it is a conflict of interest, and then we ought to get a legal opinion from whoever is questioning your commitment to this
yeah,
board.
nobody's actively questioning it. It's just.
But if it's Urbana, then it should be Urbana legal to say, let's see where the perception of conflict of interest is, and there is none, so now that we have, and,
it
Urbana
out
could do it,
there.
or Fred Staven could do it in Champaign as well, if there's a perception. We, as commissioners, don't think, and I think you've done an excellent job, I think probably you need a little bit more support from us as commissioners, and I think you're gonna do and you're gonna make a fine chair moving forward. So I would hate for you to step down at this juncture where we're trying to piece the commission back together, and I look forward for your leadership moving forward. And I would totally support that, and I'm pretty sure that my commissioners will consider all of that as well.
Okay, well then maybe that's another item for the agenda, to get a legal opinion from the two cities on the conflict of interest question,
Yeah, put it to rest.
so that it can be out there officially. Okay, so there was a suggestion that we not do appointment of commissioners at this meeting. I think that's a reasonable suggestion. We're at that point in the agenda, so we're discussing it. We don't have to make a motion. Does anyone want to make the motion?
No need.
Okay. Moving on to audience participation, always the most exciting part of these meetings. There is none, so we're moving on to commissioners' comments. I think we've had a lot of comments, but if you have anything else to say, speak now. All right, our next meeting is assuming we still exist, is January 21st, 2016, 3:30 p.m. in the Urbana City Council chambers. I will make a more strenuous effort to get the providers here. Yeah, I guess so. And do the agenda items that we talked about.
I move we adjourn.
Second,
Oh, wait.
it's done.
It hasn't been voted on. Discussion. Who's taking the minutes for this? Because it's not supposed to be a city staff person moving forward.
Oh, I thought earlier, somebody said, we'll volunteer to go ahead and do it for another meeting or two.
If it was the last meeting.
If it was the
No,
last
I
meeting.
mean tonight, yeah.
If it was the last meeting.
Oh,
I'm willing to go through the nearly 2 hours of video and summarize into a couple of paragraphs, which I think is really all that will be required.
Okay.
Yeah. If you could forward me any notes you have, that would be helpful.
I would. If you could ask me for them if you need them, that would be
Okay.
helpful. All in favor of adjournment?
aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Good.
Wanted to thank one and all for coming as well. I think
Yeah.
it was a good discussion.
One of our better ones in recent